The night sky was quiet, almost peaceful above the remote desert observatory. The wind whispered over the dunes, carrying with it a dry, cold scent. Inside the small research facility, a team of astronomers worked late into the night, scanning the vast stretches of space. Their instruments had been trained on a particular section of the Cygnus constellation for weeks, recording signals, analyzing patterns, and hoping for any sign of something unusual. Most nights passed without anything remarkable, filled only with the static hum of machinery and the occasional blinking of lights. But this night, everything changed. Dr. Elena Torres, the lead scientist, stared at her monitor with wide eyes. The screen, which usually displayed nothing but the routine noise of distant stars, now pulsed with a rhythmic pattern. It wasn't random. It repeated in ways that suggested intelligence, thought, and communication. She felt a shiver run down her spine. "Everyone, look at this," she called softly, not wanting to startle anyone, yet unable to hide her excitement. The team gathered around, their faces illuminated by the glow of the screens. They watched as the signals repeated, forming sequences that were clearly intentional. It was a plea. Someone, or something, was reaching out across the void. The team immediately began working to decode the pattern. Hours passed, and as the sun slowly approached the horizon, the signals began to form coherent messages. Though they were not immediately understandable in human language, they clearly conveyed urgency, fear, and desperation. The message was a call for help. The aliens were in trouble, and they needed anyone to respond. Dr. Torres could feel her heart pounding. She knew that, if this signal was genuine, it could be the most important discovery in human history. Within days, a specialized human-led research team was organized. They gathered supplies, equipment, and communication devices specifically designed for contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. The journey to the distant, water-rich planet was long and difficult, taking several months in the fastest spacecraft available. Every team member carried a mix of curiosity, fear, and determination. No one knew exactly what they would find, but all of them understood the gravity of the mission. They were traveling to a world that had cried out across the stars for help, and it was humanity's responsibility to answer that call. When the humans finally arrived, they were met with a scene that was both beautiful and unsettling. The planet's surface was covered in rolling hills and dense forests that glowed faintly under the light of the twin suns. Rivers wound their way through the landscape like shimmering ribbons, and the air was thick with the scent of strange flowers and vegetation. But the beauty was deceptive. The humans could immediately sense that something was wrong. The forests were patchy, some areas completely lifeless, and the rivers carried signs of contamination. It was clear that this world was in crisis and that the aliens who lived there were struggling to survive. The aliens themselves were unlike anything the humans had imagined. They were humanoid in shape, with long, graceful limbs, but their skin was translucent, allowing faint glimpses of glowing veins and organs beneath. Their eyes were large, reflecting the light in colors that shifted with their emotions. Bioluminescent patterns ran across their bodies, changing like a living display of thought and feeling. At first, the humans could barely understand their communication, which relied on subtle light patterns combined with melodic tones. But slowly, with the help of translation technology and careful observation, the humans began to understand. The aliens were intelligent, sensitive, and deeply frightened. Their population had been shrinking, their ecosystems failing, and their homes falling into ruin. They had reached out across space because they had no other choice. As the humans set up their base, they began working immediately to assess the situation. They took water samples from the rivers, tested the soil, and mapped the remaining habitable areas. The aliens, watching with a mixture of hope and anxiety, offered guidance in their own ways, pointing the humans toward areas that were still alive and showing them signs of danger. It was a delicate balance. The humans had advanced technology, but the planet itself was foreign, and mistakes could have catastrophic consequences. Every step required patience, observation, and careful collaboration. Even with the best technology and expertise, the humans quickly realized the scale of the challenge. The planet's climate had shifted dramatically in recent decades, triggering floods, droughts, and strange weather patterns that threatened every living creature. Disease had spread among the alien population, and some of their food sources had been decimated by environmental collapse. Rebuilding what had been lost would take time, knowledge, and immense effort. But the humans also realized something else. This was not just a mission of science, it was a mission of empathy, courage, and survival. These aliens had trusted them, and they could not afford to fail. At night, Dr. Torres often stayed awake, in her quarters, watching the alien city from a distance. The structures were delicate, almost ethereal, made of materials that seemed to grow like living plants. Yet many buildings were crumbling, and lights that once shone brightly were dim or extinguished. She thought about the message that had first reached her observatory, the desperate plea for help that had changed the course of her life. It was easy to see why the aliens had sent it. They were on the edge of losing everything, and humans were now their only hope. Despite the fear and uncertainty, there were moments of hope. Small alien children played in the safer areas of the settlement, laughing and running under the watchful eyes of their parents. The humans began to teach basic techniques for purifying water, rebuilding shelter, and monitoring the environment. Every success, no matter how small, brought a glimmer of relief. The aliens responded in their own way, adapting to new methods and combining them with their natural skills. Slowly, a partnership began to form, built on trust, respect, and the shared goal of survival. By the end of the first weeks, it was clear to the human team that this mission would be unlike any other. They were no longer mere observers of a distant world. They were active participants in the struggle of an entire species. The stakes were unimaginably high, and the margin for error was tiny. But amidst the danger and uncertainty, there was also a profound sense of purpose. The humans had come in response to a plea for help, and now they would face whatever challenges were necessary to protect and aid those who had reached across the stars. The humans had barely begun to understand the alien world when a new threat appeared. At first, it started with strange disturbances in the forests and mountains. Animals that had once been calm became aggressive. Trees and plants began to wither, in patches as though an unseen force was spreading across the land. The aliens called it the shadow hunt, a term that sent shivers through the humans who heard it. They quickly learned that the shadow hunt referred to an approaching species, one that the aliens had never seen before and feared above all else. These creatures were the Deathworlders, hunters from a distant system. They were large, fast, and terrifyingly intelligent. Their skin was dark and tough, almost like armor, and their limbs were long and powerful. They moved in coordinated groups, communicating silently through vibrations and subtle gestures that humans could barely detect. Unlike anything the humans had encountered in their studies of Earth or space, the Deathworlders were not merely predators, they were strategists. They adapted to every obstacle, learned from every mistake, and struck with precision. The first encounter occurred when a small human-alien scouting team was investigating a forest area near a river. At first, everything seemed normal. Birds chirped faintly and the gentle sound of flowing water filled the air. Then the ground trembled subtly, a warning the team did not recognize. Suddenly, shadows moved among the trees, and the Deathworlders emerged. The humans froze, their training insufficient for this unknown threat. The aliens reacted instinctively, emitting bright patterns of bioluminescence that sent flashes of light across the forest, hoping to confuse the attackers. But it was not enough. The Deathworlders moved faster than anyone could react, capturing several smaller alien creatures before retreating as silently as they had appeared. Panic spread quickly through the alien settlements. Families hurried to protect children and elderly members, moving them to safer, more fortified areas. Humans tried to help, but their weapons and equipment were only partially effective against the Deathworlders. Bullets and lasers slowed them, but did not stop them entirely. The humans realized immediately that conventional strategies would fail. These creatures were unlike anything seen before, and the risk to both humans and aliens was enormous. In the following days, reconnaissance missions revealed the scale of the threat. The Deathworlders moved in packs of dozens, sometimes hundreds, hunting systematically across the planet. They seemed to know the weaknesses of the alien settlements before humans could explain them. The aliens, once confident in their ability to survive on this planet, were now terrified. Many of them had never left their settlements before, and now the very ground they had called home felt unsafe. Dr. Elena Torres and her team worked tirelessly to establish temporary safe zones, using technology to create barriers and early warning systems. But the Deathworlders were clever, finding ways to circumvent the defenses almost as soon as they were built. The humans also began studying the Deathworlders' behavior, hoping to find a pattern. They observed the creatures' hunting techniques, the way they communicated, and how they responded to threats. Slowly, it became clear that these creatures had learned to exploit weaknesses, not just in the alien settlements, but in humans as well. Any misstep could cost lives. Every patrol, every supply run became a tense operation where humans and aliens moved with extreme caution. The bond between the two species grew stronger out of necessity, as both relied on each other for survival. Amid the fear, there were moments of hope. Some of the aliens began to share knowledge of their planet's natural defenses, subtle methods they had used for centuries to survive other dangers. They showed humans hidden areas where predators could be trapped, chemical plants that could create irritants, and forests that could hide entire groups if used correctly. Humans adapted their technology to work with these natural systems, creating new ways to protect both themselves and the alien population. Each small victory provided a glimmer of confidence, a reminder that the Deathworlders were not invincible. Despite these efforts, losses were heavy. Entire alien communities were forced to relocate, leaving behind homes and resources they had built over generations. Human teams faced constant danger, and even minor mistakes could lead to casualties. Fear was constant, but it did not stop them. Every human and alien understood that giving up was not an option. Survival depended on learning, adapting, and working together. Slowly, a strategy began to form. The humans would not fight the Deathworlders head-on. Instead, they would use the planet itself to their advantage, combining alien knowledge of terrain and natural hazards with human tactics. Meanwhile, the Deathworlders continued their systematic hunts. They moved silently across mountains, through rivers and across forests, always observing, always learning. The aliens told stories of previous encounters, of times when similar creatures had come and vanished without explanation. But this time was different. The Deathworlders had returned, and nothing could stop them unless humans and aliens worked together. Each night, humans reviewed footage, analyzed patterns, and planned their next moves. Sleep became scarce, but determination never wavered. The urgency of the situation left no room for fear to dominate. Action was the only option. By the end of the first month, the human and alien teams had established a network of communication and observation posts throughout the most vulnerable areas. They developed alert systems, combining alien light patterns with human signals, so that any approaching Deathworlders could be detected early. Patrols were organized, with humans and aliens moving together in shifts to cover more ground. Every person knew the risks, yet courage persisted. The Deathworlders were relentless, but humans and aliens were learning to anticipate them. The alien community began to change as well. Once they had looked to humans solely for help, they now began contributing actively to defense and strategy. Elders and skilled hunters shared knowledge of terrain, natural traps, and ways to use the planet's resources for protection. Children and younger members learned survival techniques quickly, often faster than humans expected. Cooperation became instinctive, a dance of survival in a hostile world. Fear remained, but it was balanced by a growing sense of unity and shared purpose. By the time the second month arrived, both humans and aliens understood that the Deathworlders were not just invaders, they were a test of resilience, intelligence, and cooperation. They had to act quickly, learn constantly, and adapt continuously. Every plan required precision, every decision carried consequences, but the humans and aliens were determined to survive. The stakes had never been higher, and failure was not an option. And yet, amid the tension, there was a strange sense of hope. Together, species from different worlds were standing against a common enemy, learning from each other, and discovering strengths they had never known existed. After weeks of constant threat from the Deathworlders, the humans realized that their usual tactics were not enough. Their weapons, their technology, and even their careful planning could only slow the predators temporarily. Every encounter reminded them that these creatures were intelligent and adaptive, learning from each engagement. The alien species, however, had their own ways of survival, ways humans had barely begun to notice. It became clear that if they wanted to protect the planet and its inhabitants, they would need to learn from the aliens, not just impose human methods. The aliens began teaching the humans small but remarkable techniques that had been passed down for generations. One of the first lessons involved subtle camouflage. The aliens could change the patterns of light across their skin to blend with their environment. Humans could not mimic this naturally, but they studied the concept and adapted their uniforms with materials that could reflect light and break up outlines in forests and plains. Using these methods, scouting teams could move more safely, hiding from the Deathworlders long enough to observe their behavior. The aliens were impressed at how quickly humans adapted, and humans were astonished at the alien skills they had never imagined. Chemical signals were another remarkable method the aliens used. Certain plants on the planet could release scents that confused predators or made areas seem dangerous. The aliens would guide humans to harvest and use these plants, teaching them how to place them strategically around vulnerable settlements. In time, humans learned to combine alien chemical deterrents with their own technology, creating zones that the Deathworlders avoided or entered hesitantly. It was not a perfect solution, but it gave both species more control over the environment and improved their chances of survival. Observation and patience became key strategies. Humans had relied on fast responses and force, but the aliens taught them to watch, wait, and understand patterns. By observing the Deathworlders' movements, humans began to notice small habits, the times of day they hunted, how they responded to light or sound, and how they communicated with one another. Combining this knowledge with alien intuition, the humans could predict where the predators might strike next. Small teams began setting up observation posts in hidden locations, sometimes using mirrors, sensors, or camouflage devices. This allowed them to warn nearby settlements of approaching threats and prepare defenses in advance. Trust between humans and aliens grew steadily. Initially, the aliens had been wary of the humans, unsure if they would be able to help or if they might cause more harm than good. But as humans demonstrated their willingness to learn and adapt, confidence increased. The alien community began contributing actively to defense planning, offering suggestions that were often ingenious in their simplicity. One such strategy involved using the natural terrain to create traps for the Deathworlders. Rivers, cliffs, and dense forests could be used to channel the predators into areas where their movement was limited. Humans, combining this knowledge with mechanical traps and warning systems, began to see the first successes against the Deathworlders. Meanwhile, humans also shared knowledge with the aliens. They taught them how to purify water more efficiently, how to use solar and chemical energy for lighting and alarms, and how to organize teams for faster communication. The exchange was mutual and dynamic. Aliens adapted human tools to suit their needs, while humans adopted alien methods to survive. Together, they became a team that relied on each other's strengths. The sense of shared purpose was powerful. What had begun as a rescue mission was evolving into a partnership in survival, born from necessity, but strengthened by trust. Rescue missions became one of the most dangerous but essential tasks. Human-alien teams ventured into areas where Deathworlders were active to retrieve lost or endangered individuals. These missions required careful planning and execution. Using camouflage, chemical deterrents, and terrain advantages, small groups were able to navigate hostile areas with minimal losses. Each successful rescue boosted morale. The aliens saw humans not just as helpers, but as allies who were willing to risk their lives for the survival of the species. Humans, in turn, were amazed at the resilience and courage of the aliens, learning that intelligence and adaptability came in many forms. The Deathworlders, however, were not easily defeated. They quickly adapted to new human strategies and began testing defenses in different ways. It became a continuous cycle of learning, adapting, and countering. The humans documented every encounter, every behavioral pattern, and every outcome. Scientists on both sides worked together to understand weaknesses, not just of the Deathworlders but also of the planet's environment. They realized that the planet itself could be an ally if used carefully. Rivers could be redirected, plants could be used strategically, and natural barriers could be strengthened with simple structures. Each discovery increased their chances of survival. As weeks turned into months, the alien population began to regain some confidence. Once fearful and hesitant, they now participated actively in defense and planning. Young aliens learned quickly, practicing camouflage, assisting with traps, and even scouting under the guidance of humans. Elder aliens shared wisdom about the Yao planet's history, teaching humans about seasonal changes, safe zones, and dangerous areas. Knowledge that had been preserved for centuries now became crucial for immediate survival. The aliens' ability to adapt and the humans' ability to innovate created a combination that was proving surprisingly effective. The team also developed communication systems that combined human technology with alien light patterns. In forests or open fields, humans could relay messages using lights, sounds, or chemical markers, which aliens could understand instantly. This system allowed coordinated actions across distances that would have been impossible before. It was especially effective in warning settlements of approaching Deathworlders, giving inhabitants enough time to move to safety. Every small victory built confidence and strengthened the bond between species. Through trial and error, humans and aliens began to reclaim some control over the planet. Small areas were cleared of Deathworlder activity, settlements became safer, and routines could be established without constant fear. It was far from perfect, but it was progress. The human team realized that the key to survival was patience, observation, and collaboration. The Deathworlders were formidable, but the combination of human ingenuity and alien knowledge gave hope that the planet could be defended. By the end of Part 3, it was clear that humans and aliens had moved from simple cooperation to true partnership. They had learned from each other, adapted together, and found ways to counter a threat that had once seemed unstoppable. Fear still existed, but it was tempered with confidence. Hope, however fragile, had returned. The alien species, once pleading helplessly for aid, now stood alongside humans ready to fight for their home. And humans in turn had discovered that survival in this distant world required not only skill and intelligence, but trust, courage, and the willingness to learn from those they had come to save. The humans and aliens had learned much from each other, but the constant threat of the Deathworlders had not diminished. Every day brought new challenges, new strategies, and new dangers. It became clear that the only way to survive was to take the fight to the predators themselves. Together, humans and aliens began planning a large-scale defense that would protect the remaining settlements while giving them a chance to reclaim the land. The plan was bold and required precise coordination. The humans would provide strategy, technology, and heavy equipment, while the aliens would use their intimate knowledge of the planet's terrain and natural defenses. Rivers, cliffs, and forests would be used to channel the Deathworlders into areas where traps had been set. Certain plants that emitted chemical deterrents would be strategically placed, and light patterns would serve as early warning systems. Every detail was important, as even a small mistake could cost lives. The first major engagement began at dawn. Teams of humans and aliens moved quietly through the forest, setting up positions and traps. The Deathworlders approached as expected, moving in their usual coordinated manner. At first, the predators seemed cautious, testing the defenses and searching for weaknesses, but the combined tactics of humans and aliens began to take effect. Chemical deterrents confused them, terrain traps slowed them, and coordinated strikes from both species forced them to retreat and regroup. The battle was intense and exhausting. Humans fired carefully, aiming to slow the Deathworlders without unnecessary harm to the environment. Aliens used bioluminescent patterns to communicate instantly across distances, allowing teams to coordinate attacks and retreats. Every movement, Had to be precise, every decision critical. Lives were lost, but each loss brought lessons, and every small victory boosted morale. By the end of the first day, the Deathworlders had been driven back from a key settlement, giving humans and aliens a hard-earned moment of relief. In the following days, the humans and aliens adapted further. They studied the Deathworlders' reactions, learning how the predators adapted to traps, signals, and terrain. Using this knowledge, they refined their defenses and created more sophisticated strategies. The aliens, who had once relied solely on instinct, now combined it with human planning. Human teams, once unfamiliar with the planet, now navigated it almost as effortlessly as the aliens. Together they had become a team that could anticipate and counter the Deathworlders' moves. Morale improved across the alien settlements. Communities that had lived in fear now contributed actively to defense and strategy. Children practiced survival techniques under supervision. Scouts monitored predator movements, and elders advised on the best ways to use terrain and natural resources. Humans, too, became more confident. They had seen the effectiveness of combined tactics, and the successes reinforced their commitment to the mission. The partnership between species had become more than practical. It had become essential. By the third week of coordinated action, humans and aliens had begun to reclaim more territory. Areas that had been unsafe for months were slowly becoming habitable again. The Deathworlders were being driven back systematically, forced to retreat into less accessible regions. Though the threat had not disappeared, hope was growing. Humans and aliens were beginning to see that survival was possible and that the planet could be protected. The final turning point came when a major group of Deathworlders approached a large alien settlement. This time, humans and aliens were ready. Every trap, every defensive measure, and every strategy was in place. When the predators attacked, they were met with a combination of chemical deterrents, terrain obstacles, and coordinated strikes. The Deathworlders, unprepared for such an organized defense, struggled to adapt. One by one, they were driven back, retreating further than they ever had before. By the end of the day, the settlement was safe, and humans and aliens celebrated their first decisive victory. This victory marked a change in the balance of power. The Deathworlders were still dangerous, but humans and aliens had proven they could fight back effectively. Trust, skill, and cooperation had turned desperation into strength. The aliens, once pleading helplessly for help, now stood alongside humans, actively defending their home. Humans, in turn, had learned that survival in this world required collaboration, observation, and courage. Together, they had reached a point where hope was no longer fragile, it was real, and it gave them the determination to continue fighting. After weeks of relentless struggle, the Deathworlders gradually withdrew from the planet. Their presence left scars on the landscape, but no permanent destruction had occurred. Human and alien teams worked tirelessly to repair what had been damaged, restoring homes, infrastructure, and natural habitats. The planet remained fragile, but its inhabitants had survived and even begun to rebuild stronger than before. Humans and aliens shared knowledge freely. Humans taught the aliens more advanced techniques for water purification, shelter building, and monitoring environmental conditions. Aliens shared their deep understanding of the planet's ecosystems, allowing humans to create tools and systems that complemented natural processes. Together, they began restoring areas that had been abandoned, turning dangerous zones into safe zones, and slowly reclaiming control over the land. The bond between species had grown stronger than anyone could have expected. The aliens no longer saw humans merely as helpers. They were allies, friends, and protectors. Humans, too, had developed deep respect and affection for the alien species. Both sides had faced fear, danger, and loss, and together they had overcome challenges that neither could have managed alone. Trust had become the foundation of their relationship, and it was this trust that allowed them to rebuild and plan for the future. Life slowly returned to a rhythm, though the memory of the Deathworlders lingered. The alien population began to recover. Children played freely under the watchful eyes of adults, learning from both human and alien mentors. Communities that had been broken by fear were now organized and resilient. Humans documented the planet's history, ecosystems, and alien culture, ensuring that future generations would understand both the dangers they had faced and the successes they had achieved. The humans knew their mission was not yet over. Though the Deathworlders had left, the planet remained vulnerable. They trained the aliens to defend themselves, combining human technology with alien knowledge. Observation posts and alert systems remained in place, and young aliens were taught to recognize early signs of danger. Humans made clear that they would return if needed, leaving behind tools, knowledge, and strategies that could be used for generations. Despite the challenges, there was also hope. The planet was no longer a place of fear, but of possibility. Humans and aliens had learned that survival required courage, intelligence, and cooperation. They had seen that even in the darkest times, collaboration could overcome unimaginable threats. The aliens, once helpless and pleading for aid, now stood as a species capable of defending themselves and rebuilding their civilization. As humans prepared to leave the planet, there was a sense of accomplishment mixed with humility. They had come to answer a plea for help, and in doing so, they had witnessed a remarkable partnership between species. The alien civilization had survived, learned, and adapted, and humans had grown in understanding and compassion. Both species had changed, forever connected by the trials they had faced together. The humans' departure was bittersweet. They left behind equipment, knowledge, and communication systems, but also a bond that could not be broken by distance. The aliens watched them go, their bioluminescent patterns flickering in farewell. Though challenges remained, they were now prepared for the future. Their world, once on the brink of collapse, had been saved through courage, wisdom, and the willingness to work together. In the end, the story of the planet became a lesson for all who knew it. It was a story of survival against a seemingly unstoppable threat, of trust between species, and of the power of learning from one another. Humans had answered a plea for help, and in doing so, had discovered that the greatest strength comes not from technology or power alone, but from unity, cooperation, and determination. The aliens had endured, learned, and grown, and their planet, though fragile, had a future filled with hope. And so, the once helpless species thrived once more, standing proudly on their planet, ready to face whatever the universe might send next. The humans returned to their own world, carrying with them stories, knowledge, and a deep understanding of what it meant to help another species survive in the face of unimaginable danger. Together, humans and aliens had proven that life, no matter how fragile, could endure when courage, trust, and collaboration were stronger than fear.